looked at the person lying next to you and suddenly realized they feel like a complete stranger? My name is James, and this isn't just a story about a broken marriage. It's a story about love, betrayal, and an old watch my father left behind. The one thing that reminded me I matter, that I'm not weak, and that I deserve respect. 3 weeks ago, my dad died of pancreatic cancer, a brutal illness. By the time it was diagnosed, it was already too late. 2 months. That's all we had from the moment we found out to the day he was gone. He left me one thing, an old Tissot watch, engraved with his name and the years he worked at the garage, the place he dedicated his whole life to. It was his final gift, his last way of saying, I'm proud of you. I came home from the funeral, quietly set the watch down on the kitchen table, and just sat there, thinking about him. Then Michelle, my wife, walked in, fresh from her workout, smoothie in hand. She glanced at me and sighed. He wasn't anything special. Maybe now you'll stop using him as an excuse to be so weak. Then, without hesitation, she snatched the watch off the table and tossed it straight into the trash. Grow up, James, she said, and walked off. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up, quietly pulled the watch out of the garbage, wiped off the coffee grounds and eggshells, and slipped it into my shirt pocket. Not one word. That night, I lay beside the woman who once meant the world to me, and realized that whatever we had, it died a long time ago. So I started paying attention, and I saw everything. The secret transactions, the shady messages with her personal trainer, Gustavo, texts mocking me, disrespecting my dad, saying I was a burden. And then I found the transfers, almost $15,000 siphoned out of our joint account into one under her name. But the worst part? While I was burying my father, Michelle was on my laptop, digging through my life insurance policy, checking my investment accounts. She didn't come to the funeral, but she did make time to figure out how much money she'd get. If I died too. That's when I made my decision. No screaming, no fighting, no drama, just exactly what my father would have wanted from me. To be a good man, and never let anyone disrespect you. I gathered everything, screenshots, statements, GPS locations, bank records. One by one, I moved my money out, hired a lawyer, signed a lease on a new apartment, and while she was off on a girls' retreat, which we both know was a weekend with Gustavo, I moved everything that was mine out of the house. I left one thing on the kitchen counter, a divorce packet, copies of every message, every document, every piece of proof. And one final note, the watch, the only thing my father ever left me, is safe. You will never touch it again. 3 days later, she showed up at my best friend's house, in a bathrobe, screaming at the top of her lungs. He took everything. And just like a bad play that refuses to end, she collapsed on the porch steps, sobbing, calling out for Gustavo, who never answered. That's when everything blew up. She started calling everyone we knew, spinning stories about how I'd gone off the rails. Obsessed with my dead father, she said. But this time, I didn't stay silent. I sent the receipts to her mother, her father, her brother. The people who once believed I was the problem now saw the truth. Eventually, I agreed to meet Michelle one last time, at the park where my dad used to take me fishing as a kid. She cried, begged, spoke about forgiveness and second chances. I didn't argue, I didn't raise my voice. I just rolled up my sleeve and showed her the watch still strapped to my wrist. If you hadn't thrown this in the trash that day, maybe we wouldn't be standing here now. And then I walked away, never looked back. Today I live in a small apartment. It's not fancy, not flashy, but it's mine. I have peace. I have people who care. I'm starting over, and every morning I put on that watch, my dad's watch, as a reminder. You're not weak. You just needed to remember who you are. Never let someone take away what's valuable to you just because they don't understand its worth. I pulled out an old notebook, one of the few things I brought with me from that house, and began to write. Day 1 of the rest of my life. No more pretending, no more pleasing everyone else. Just me, living my truth. Last week I had coffee with Mara, an old friend from high school, someone who gently pulled me out of the shell I'd built around myself. We didn't talk about the divorce. We didn't talk about betrayal. We talked about high school parties, the big maple tree behind the gym, and the dreams we once had. That soft, unforced conversation reminded me of something important. I'm still me, no matter how much I've been hurt. Week by week, Mara and I started to fall into an easy rhythm. Saturday morning coffee, Sunday evening walks. A simple, "Did you see something beautiful today?" sent over text. Sometimes we'd cook together, trying old recipes, laughing at our mistakes, and just being present. Mara never tried to change me. She never asked me to forget my father, never tiptoed around the word divorce. She simply accepted me, wounds and all, watch and all. One night, while we were watching an old black and white film, she gently took my hand and whispered, "He must have been a good man. And this watch, It's part of you. I didn't say anything, just held her hand a little tighter, because sometimes words aren't needed. And on a warm May night, with the city glowing in soft golden light, I wrote a single line in my journal. I used to think that after Michelle, there would be nothing left. But I was wrong. Because after everything, there are still people like Mara. Not to replace what was lost, but to remind me that life doesn't end with heartbreak. It just begins again. In a new chapter, a softer one. And that chapter? We're writing it together, one day at a time. With quiet dinners, with pressure-free conversations, with the kind of presence that doesn't need fixing. Just understanding. If you see yourself in this story, if you've ever had to quietly gather the pieces of a heart broken by someone you once loved, then take this as your sign. Leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but because maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs to hear this. To know that after the pain, there are gentler chapters waiting. Thank you for listening to my story.